The rain came down hard on the quiet streets of Riverside Heights. James Park checked his watch as he drove through the neighborhood. It was almost 7 in the evening. He had just finished a meeting with a new client who lived in one of the big houses on Maple Street. The meeting went well. James felt good about the case. James was a lawyer. He had his own small practice in the city. He worked hard to build his reputation over the past 8 years. People trusted him. He won cases that other lawyers said were impossible to win. Tonight he was heading home to his wife and 2 kids. His daughter had a school play tomorrow and he promised he would be there. The neighborhood was nice. Big trees lined the streets. Expensive cars sat in wide driveways. Street lights made everything look clean and peaceful. James had been to this area many times for work. He knew the roads well. Red and blue lights flashed in his rearview mirror. James felt his stomach drop. He was not speeding. He always followed traffic rules carefully. As a black man, he learned long ago that even small mistakes could turn into big problems during traffic stops. He signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. James put his car in park and placed both hands on the steering wheel. He knew the routine. Stay calm, be polite. Do not give them any reason. The police car stopped behind him. One officer got out and walked slowly toward James's window. The rain made his uniform shine under the streetlights. James rolled down his window. Cold rain hit his face. The officer bent down and looked inside the car. His name tag read Bradford. He was a white man in his early 40s with a thick neck and cold eyes. License and registration, Officer Bradford said. His voice was flat. Yes, officer, James replied. He kept his voice calm and respectful. I am going to reach for my wallet in my jacket pocket. Is that okay? Bradford nodded but kept his hand near his belt. James moved slowly. He took out his wallet and found his driver's license. Then he opened the glove box and pulled out his registration and insurance papers. He handed everything to the officer through the window. Bradford took the documents and looked at them with his flashlight. His expression changed when he saw James's name and address. His eyes moved from the papers to James's face and back again. Something shifted in his attitude. Mr. Park, Bradford said slowly, do you know why I stopped you? No, sir, I do not know, James answered honestly. Your left taillight is broken, Bradford said. James felt confused. He had just driven past several well-lit areas. His car was only 2 years old. He took good care of it. He had not hit anything or noticed any problems. Are you sure, officer? I did not notice any issues, James said carefully. Bradford's face hardened. Are you questioning me? I know a broken taillight when I see one. I am sorry, officer. I am not questioning you. I just was not aware of the problem, James said. He kept his voice level. Bradford stepped back from the window. Step out of the vehicle, please. James's heart beat faster. This was escalating for no reason. But he knew better than to argue. He unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door. The rain soaked through his suit jacket immediately. He stood beside his car with his hands visible. Wait here, Bradford ordered. He walked back to his patrol car with James's documents. James stood in the rain. Water ran down his face and neck. He watched Bradford sit in his car talking on his radio. The officer was taking a long time. James knew this tactic. Make the person wait. Make them uncomfortable. Show them who has the power. 5 minutes passed, then 10. James was completely wet now. His expensive suit was ruined. Cars drove by slowly. People stared at him standing in the rain next to his car with a police cruiser behind him. James felt the familiar burn of humiliation mixed with anger, but he pushed the anger down. Getting angry would not help. Finally, Bradford got out of his patrol car. He walked back slowly as if he had all the time in the world. He held James's documents in one hand and a ticket book in the other. Mr. Park, I am also citing you for failure to use your turn signal 3 blocks back when you turned onto this street, Bradford said. James remembered that turn clearly. He always used his signal. Always. Officer, I am certain I used my turn signal. I always do, Bradford's eyes narrowed. Now you are calling me a liar? That is not a good idea. No, sir. I am just saying what I remember, James replied. Well, your memory is wrong, Bradford snapped. He looked at the registration paper again. And I see here that your registration expired last month. That is 3 violations. James felt ice in his stomach. That was impossible. He had renewed his registration 2 months ago. He had the new sticker on his license plate. He had the paperwork at home. "Officer, my registration is current. I renewed it in September." "The new sticker is on my plate," James said. Bradford walked to the back of the car. He looked at the license plate for a moment. When he came back, his face showed no emotion. "My system shows it as expired." "Are you telling me our police database is wrong?" James realized what was happening. This was not about a tail light or a turn signal or registration. This was about something else entirely. He had seen it before in other people's stories. He never thought it would happen to him. Not like this. Not so obviously. "I am just saying what I know to be true, officer," James said quietly. Bradford wrote on his ticket book with quick, angry movements. "I am going to need you to open your trunk." "May I ask why?" James asked. "I have reasonable suspicion that you may be carrying illegal items," Bradford said. James knew this was not legal. Bradford had no real reason to search his car. But he also knew that arguing here on the street would only make things worse. If he refused, Bradford might arrest him. Then he would miss his daughter's play. His wife would worry. The news might report lawyer arrested during traffic stop and people would assume he did something wrong. "Yes, officer," James said. He walked to the trunk and opened it with his key. Inside was just his briefcase, a gym bag with workout clothes and an emergency kit. Nothing suspicious, nothing illegal, just a normal car trunk. Bradford pulled everything out and searched through it all. He opened James's briefcase and went through his legal files. He dumped out the gym bag. He checked every corner of the trunk. The rain kept falling. James's documents and clothes got soaked on the wet ground. After 20 minutes, Bradford threw everything back into the trunk carelessly. Papers scattered. James's water bottle rolled into a puddle. The officer found nothing because there was nothing to find. Bradford handed James 3 citations and his documents. "You can contest these in court if you want, but I suggest you just pay the fines and move on. It will be easier for everyone." There was something in his tone, a threat hidden under official words. Bradford was confident. He had done this before. He expected James to pay the money and forget about it like everyone else probably did. James took the tickets without saying anything. His hand shook slightly, but not from the cold. Bradford walked back to his patrol car, got in, and drove away. The red and blue lights disappeared around the corner. James stood alone in the rain next to his open trunk. He looked at the 3 citations. Each one was a lie. The taillight was not broken. He used his turn signal. His registration was current. But Bradford had written them anyway. He had wasted 40 minutes of James's time, humiliated him in public, and searched his car for no legal reason. James closed his trunk and got back in his car. Water dripped from his clothes onto the leather seats. He sat there for a moment, breathing slowly. Then he remembered something. His dash cam. He always kept a dash cam running when he drove. It recorded everything. The turn signal. The conversation. Bradford's face. All of it. James drove home carefully. His mind was already working like it did in court. He was not just angry anymore. He was focused. Officer Bradford made a mistake tonight. He chose the wrong person to bully. James was not going to pay these fines. He was not going to forget about it. He was going to fight back with the one weapon Bradford could not defend against. The truth. And James knew exactly how to prove it. James arrived home at 8:30. His wife Michelle was in the kitchen making tea. She heard the door open and came into the hallway. Her smile disappeared when she saw him. "What happened to you?" "You are soaking wet," she said. She grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to him. James dried his face and told her everything. Michelle listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she hugged him tightly. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Are you okay?" "I am angry," James admitted. "But I am going to do something about it." The next morning, James went to his office early. He worked with his law partner, Sarah Kim. She arrived an hour later and found him already deep in research at his computer. Empty coffee cup sat on his desk. "You look terrible." "What is going on?" Sarah asked. James explained the traffic stop. He showed her the 3 citations. Sarah sat down and read them carefully. She had been a lawyer for 12 years. She knew what she was looking at. This is clearly retaliation or bias. But James, fighting traffic tickets costs more time and money than just paying them. Each fine is only $150. Total of $450. "You could spend 20 hours on this case and make nothing," Sarah said. This is not about the money, James replied. It is about what is right. Sarah understood. She nodded. Okay, what do you need from me? Help me research Officer Bradford. I want to know everything about his record, James said. They started with public records. Police officers' citation histories were public information, though getting them required filing the right paperwork. James submitted a Freedom of Information request for Bradford's traffic stop data for the past 5 years. The police department had 30 days to respond, but James called every few days to push them. While waiting, James looked at his dash cam footage. The video was clear. It showed him using his turn signal at the exact intersection Bradford claimed he did not. The timestamp proved it. The audio recorded their entire conversation. Bradford's tone, his accusations, everything. James took his car to his mechanic, Mr. Rivera. He had used Mr. Rivera for 6 years. The man was honest and detailed in his work. Check my left taillight carefully. Tell me if there is anything wrong with it, James said. Mr. Rivera examined the taillight. He tested it multiple times. He even removed it to check the wiring and bulb. Nothing wrong here, James. This taillight is perfect. Works exactly as it should. Who told you it was broken? James explained the situation. Mr. Rivera shook his head in disgust. I see this all the time. They make up reasons. I will write you a detailed report about this taillight. I will include the date of your last service, which was just 2 weeks ago. Everything was fine then, too. Mr. Rivera printed out the service records and wrote a signed statement saying the taillight was fully functional on the night of the stop and had been functional at the most recent service. He included photos and technical details. Next, James went to the DMV. He brought his registration renewal receipt from September. The clerk looked up his record in the system. Your registration is current until next September. No problems here. Who said it was expired? James explained again. The clerk printed out an official document showing his registration status. It clearly stated he had renewed on time and everything was valid. Now James had proof that 2 of the 3 citations were completely false. But he wanted more. He wanted to know if Bradford did this to other people. The Freedom of Information request came back after 3 weeks. James opened the envelope and spread the papers across his desk. Sarah came over to look. The data showed 5 years of Bradford's traffic stops. The numbers were shocking. Bradford stopped an average of 15 cars per week. In neighborhoods like Riverside Heights, where mostly white people lived, he stopped only 3% of drivers who were minorities. But those minority drivers received citations 70% of the time. White drivers in the same area received citations only 20% of the time. In neighborhoods where mostly Black and Latino families lived, Bradford stopped people constantly. The citation rate there was 90%. He gave tickets for everything: broken taillights, missing turn signals, expired registrations, tinted windows, hanging air fresheners, anything he could write down. This is a clear pattern, Sarah said quietly. He targets people based on race. James made charts and graphs from the data. The pattern was impossible to deny. Bradford was not just one bad stop. He was a systematic problem. James decided to find other victims. He posted carefully on social media and community message boards. He did not use Bradford's name publicly yet. He just asked if anyone had unfair traffic experiences in certain areas during certain times. Within 1 week, 43 people contacted him. James interviewed each one carefully. Many stories were similar to his. Some were worse. Most people had just paid the fines because fighting seemed too hard. They did not know their rights. They did not have dashcam footage. They were afraid. 3 people stood out. Their stories were very detailed and they had evidence. The first was Marcus Johnson, a teacher. He was stopped by Bradford for supposedly running a stop sign. Marcus insisted he stopped completely. Bradford searched his car and made him wait in the cold for an hour. Marcus was late to his own father's birthday dinner. He paid the fine because he did not want the hassle. The second was Linda Hernandez, a nurse. Bradford stopped her for an illegal lane change that she did not make. He asked her aggressive questions about where she was going and why she was in that neighborhood. Linda was coming home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital. She was exhausted and scared. She also paid her fine. The third was Mrs. Grace Lee, a 72-year-old grandmother. Her story made James angry all over again. Bradford stopped her because her car supposedly smelled like marijuana. Mrs. Lee never used drugs in her life. Bradford made her stand outside in freezing weather for 40 minutes while he searched her entire car. He found nothing. Her grandson arrived during the stop and recorded part of it on his phone. Bradford still gave her a ticket for having an air freshener hanging from her mirror, which he claimed obstructed her view. James met with all three in person. He explained that he was building a case against Bradford and asked if they would be willing to provide statements. All three agreed immediately. They were tired of being treated unfairly. They wanted justice too. Marcus provided his traffic citation and a detailed written statement. Linda did the same and added that two of her co-workers had similar experiences with Bradford. Mrs. Lee's grandson shared his video recording. The footage showed Bradford being unnecessarily aggressive with a senior citizen who was clearly confused and scared. James added all of this to his case file. Now he had statistical evidence of a pattern, multiple victim statements, video evidence, and expert testimony about his car. He also had his own dashcam footage and the documents proving his citations were false. But there was one more thing he needed: the body cam footage. Police officers wore body cameras that recorded their interactions with the public. That footage would show exactly what happened during the stop. It would show if Bradford examined the taillight. It would show his attitude and words. Everything. James filed another request specifically for Bradford's body cam footage from that night. This request was different. The police department pushed back. They delayed. They said they needed more time to review the footage. James knew what that meant. They were protecting Bradford. After 2 weeks of calling and sending official letters, the footage finally arrived. James loaded it onto his computer with Sarah watching. They both expected to see the complete stop from Bradford's perspective. The video started normally. It showed Bradford pulling out of a parking area and driving down the street. Then it showed him turning on his lights and pulling over James's car. The audio captured Bradford calling in the stop on his radio. Then something strange happened. The video jumped. Large sections were missing. The part where Bradford first approached the car. The part where he made James get out in the rain. The part where he searched the trunk. All of it was gone. The video jumped from Bradford turning on his lights directly to him handing James the citations 35 minutes later. Everything in between was corrupted. The file showed error messages where the video should be. That is not a coincidence, Sarah said. That is deliberate, James agreed. Someone tampered with the footage. The timing was too convenient. The exact moments that would show Bradford's behavior were missing. But the boring parts before and after were fine. That was not how technical errors worked. James contacted a digital forensics expert named Dr. Alan Chen. He specialized in recovering and analyzing digital evidence. James sent him the corrupted file and explained the situation. Dr. Chen worked on it for 3 days. His report was damning. The file metadata showed that someone accessed the footage file 3 times before it was officially logged into evidence. Each time, sections were deleted using special software that only the police department had. The deletions were intentional and targeted. Dr. Chen could not recover the deleted footage, but he could prove it was deleted on purpose. James now had everything he needed: false citations, pattern evidence, multiple victims, expert testimony, and proof of evidence tampering. Bradford was not just guilty of bias. He committed a crime by destroying evidence. Sarah looked at all the evidence spread across the conference table. This is bigger than traffic tickets now. This is a civil rights case, maybe even criminal. James sat back in his chair. He thought about all the people who paid fines they did not owe, all the people humiliated on the side of the road, all the people who lost trust in police because of officers like Bradford. The system failed them. But maybe this time the system could be fixed. I am going to court, James said. I am fighting all 3 citations, and I am filing a formal complaint with Internal Affairs at the same time. Bradford needs to answer for what he did. Sarah nodded. This could get ugly. The police union will defend him. The department will try to protect their own. They might come after you. Let them try, James said calmly. I have the truth, and I know how to prove it. James prepared his defense like he was preparing for the most important trial of his career. He organized every piece of evidence. He prepared questions for Bradford. He outlined his arguments. He printed copies of everything. He was ready. The court date was set for 3 weeks away. James notified Marcus, Linda, and Mrs. Lee that he might call them as witnesses. He prepared Dr. Chen to testify about the tampered footage. He even contacted the intersection where he was stopped and requested their traffic camera footage, which might show his turn signal from a different angle. The city fought that request too. They said the footage was routinely deleted after 30 days. But James submitted his request within 2 weeks of the stop. The footage should still exist. After threatening a court order, the city suddenly found the footage and released it. The video clearly showed James using his turn signal. Everything was falling into place. James had built an airtight case. Bradford would have to lie under oath to defend his citations, and when he did, James would destroy his credibility piece by piece. The night before court, James reviewed his notes one final time. Michelle brought him tea and sat down next to him. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "No," James said honestly. "I am ready." Bradford thought he could bully me because I was just another person he could push around. He was wrong. Tomorrow he finds out exactly who he messed with. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor wax. James arrived 30 minutes early. He wore his best Navy suit and carried a leather briefcase filled with documents. The traffic court was on the second floor. He walked up the stairs slowly, mentally reviewing his strategy. The courtroom was already filling up with people. Some looked nervous. Others looked annoyed. Most were there for simple speeding tickets or parking violations. They would pay their fines and leave. Traffic court was usually quick and predictable. James found a seat in the third row. He opened his briefcase and organized his documents one more time. Everything was in order. His dash cam footage on a USB drive, the mechanic's report, the registration documents, the traffic camera footage, the statistical analysis of Bradford's citation patterns. All of it was ready. Officer Bradford walked into the courtroom at 9:45. He wore his uniform and looked completely relaxed. He had probably testified in this courtroom hundreds of times. He knew the routine. Say what happened. The judge believes the police officer. The person pays the fine. Simple and quick. Bradford scanned the room and spotted James. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe surprise that James actually showed up. Maybe concern, but it disappeared quickly. Bradford took his seat near the front with 2 other police officers who were there for their own cases. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Patricia Morrison entered and everyone stood. Judge Morrison was a stern woman in her early 60s. She had a reputation for being fair but no nonsense. She did not like people wasting her time with weak arguments. The first few cases went quickly. A speeding ticket. The driver admitted it and paid the fine. A parking violation. Dismissed because the sign was unclear. An expired inspection sticker. The driver showed proof of recent inspection and paid a reduced fine. Each case took less than 10 minutes. At 10:30, the bailiff called James's case. The City versus James Park. Case numbers 247731, 247732, and 247733. James stood and walked to the defendant's table. Bradford walked to the witness stand and was sworn in by the bailiff. He placed his hand on the Bible and promised to tell the truth. James wondered if Bradford understood what truth really meant. The prosecutor was a young woman named Assistant District Attorney Rachel Foster. She looked tired. She probably handled 50 traffic cases every week. This was just another routine ticket to her. Officer Bradford, please state your name and badge number for the record, Ada Foster said. Officer Michael Bradford, badge number 4127. I have been with the department for 17 years, Bradford replied. His voice was confident and clear. On the evening of October 15th, did you conduct a traffic stop in the Riverside Heights neighborhood? Ada Foster asked. Yes, I did. At approximately 7:15 p.m., I observed a vehicle with a broken left taillight traveling eastbound on Riverside Avenue. I initiated a traffic stop for the safety violation, Bradford said. What else did you observe during this stop? As I followed the vehicle, I noticed the driver failed to use a turn signal when turning from Maple Street onto Riverside Avenue. When I ran the vehicle's registration, my system indicated the registration was expired. I issued 3 citations for these violations. Ada Foster nodded. Did the driver become argumentative or hostile? No. He was polite but questioned each violation. He seemed to believe he had not committed any infractions, Bradford said. There was a slight edge to his voice when he said this, as if James's belief in his own innocence was somehow suspicious. Thank you, Officer Bradford. No further questions, Ada Foster said. She sat down, clearly expecting this to be finished quickly. Judge Morrison looked at James. Mr. Park, do you wish to cross-examine the witness? Yes, Your Honor, I do, James said. He stood and approached the witness stand with a single folder. Bradford watched him with the same confident expression. He had been cross-examined before. He knew how to handle defense lawyers who tried to poke holes in his testimony. Officer Bradford, you testified that you observed a broken left taillight on my vehicle. Is that correct? James asked. That is correct, Bradford replied. Did you physically examine the taillight? I observed it was not functioning properly from my patrol vehicle. That was not my question. Did you physically get out of your car and examine the taillight up close? James's voice was calm but firm. Bradford hesitated for just a second. No, I did not need to. I could see it was broken. James opened his folder and pulled out the mechanic's report. Your Honor, I would like to submit Defense Exhibit A. This is a certified report from a licensed mechanic dated October 16th, the day after the alleged stop. It states that my left taillight was fully functional with no defects whatsoever. He handed copies to the judge, the prosecutor, and Bradford. Ada Foster looked surprised. This was not how traffic court usually went. Judge Morrison read the report carefully. Officer Bradford, according to this report, the taillight was examined the very next morning and found to be in perfect working order. How do you explain that? Bradford glanced at the report. I cannot speak to what happened after the stop. I only know what I observed that evening. Perhaps the driver had it repaired overnight. James was ready for this. Your Honor, the report also includes service records showing that the vehicle received a full safety inspection just 2 weeks before the stop. The mechanic notes that the taillight was functioning properly then as well. Additionally, I submit Defense Exhibit B. He handed over the photographs Mr. Rivera had taken showing the taillight assembly in perfect condition. These photos show no damage, no burned-out bulbs, and no wiring issues. If the taillight was broken on October 15th, these problems would still be visible on October 16th. Bradford shifted in his seat. I observed what I observed. Let us move to the second citation. You stated I failed to use my turn signal when turning from Maple Street onto Riverside Avenue. Is that correct? James asked. Yes, you turned without signaling, Bradford said firmly. You are certain about this? Absolutely certain. James pulled out another document. Your Honor, I submit Defense Exhibit C. This is traffic camera footage from the intersection of Maple Street and Riverside Avenue, obtained from the city's traffic management department. I have it on this USB drive if the court has the equipment to view it. Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. Let us see this footage. The bailiff set up a laptop and small screen that faced the judge, the prosecutor, and the witness stand. James inserted the USB drive and played the video file. The timestamp showed October 15th at 7:12 p.m. The video was clear. It showed James's car approaching the intersection. The left turn signal blinked clearly, 3 blinks before the turn. The car turned smoothly. The signal continued blinking even after the turn was complete. The courtroom was quiet. Bradford stared at the screen. His jaw tightened. Officer Bradford, this footage clearly shows the turn signal was activated. It is visible on the video. How do you explain your testimony that I failed to signal? James asked. Bradford's confidence was cracking. The angle might be deceptive. From where I was positioned, I may not have seen it activate. The law requires that a turn signal be visible from the rear of the vehicle for at least 100 feet. This video shows my signal was working properly. Whether you saw it or not does not mean I failed to use it. It means you failed to observe it correctly, James said. Ada Foster started to look uncomfortable. Judge Morrison was taking notes and frowning. James was not finished. Let us discuss the third citation. You stated that your system showed my registration as expired. Is that correct? That is what my computer indicated, yes, Bradford said. Did you physically look at the registration sticker on my license plate? I did. The sticker looked old. James pulled out his registration renewal receipt and the official DMV document. Your Honor, I submit Defense Exhibits D and E. This receipt shows I renewed my registration on September 8th, more than a month before this stop. This official DMV document, dated October 18th, confirms my registration is current and valid until September of next year. He handed everything to the judge. Judge Morrison examined the documents carefully. She looked at Bradford. "Officer, the defendant's registration was clearly current. How could your system show it as expired?" Bradford cleared his throat. "Sometimes the system has delays in updating. It is not uncommon." "A 1-month delay?" Judge Morrison asked skeptically. "It can happen," Bradford insisted. James stepped closer to the witness stand. "Officer Bradford, is it possible that you did not actually check the system at all? That you simply assumed my registration was expired and wrote the citation without verification?" "I checked the system," Bradford said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Then we have 3 citations. 1 for a taillight that was not broken, 1 for a turn signal that was clearly used, and 1 for a registration that was not expired. Officer Bradford, is it possible you made errors in all 3 observations?" James asked. The question hung in the air. Everyone in the courtroom was paying attention now. This was not a normal traffic case anymore. Bradford's face reddened. "I stand by my citations. I observed what I observed." James turned to the judge. "Your Honor, these 3 citations are not the result of errors or mistakes. They are the result of a pattern of behavior. I request permission to present additional evidence that shows Officer Bradford has a history of issuing false citations to minority drivers." Ada Foster stood up quickly. "Your Honor, this hearing is about these specific citations, not Officer Bradford's entire career. The defendant is trying to turn this into something it is not." Judge Morrison looked at James. "Mr. Park, that is a serious allegation. What evidence are you proposing to introduce?" "I have statistical analysis of Officer Bradford's traffic stops over 5 years, obtained through a Freedom of Information request. I have testimony from other drivers who experienced similar false citations. I have video evidence of Officer Bradford's conduct during another stop. And I have proof that Officer Bradford's body cam footage from my stop was deliberately tampered with to hide his behavior," James said. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Bradford's face went from red to pale. Ada Foster looked shocked. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. "Order. Everyone quiet." She looked at James seriously. "These are significant claims. Are you prepared to back them up with evidence?" "Yes, Your Honor. I have everything ready to present," James replied. Judge Morrison thought for a long moment. She looked at Bradford, who was sweating now. She looked at the evidence already presented. 3 false citations. Clear proof that all 3 were wrong. This was not normal. "I am going to continue this hearing," Judge Morrison said. "Mr. Park, you will have the opportunity to present your additional evidence at the continued hearing. ADA Foster, I suggest your office takes this matter seriously and conducts its own investigation. This court is not in the business of rubber stamping questionable citations." She set a new court date for 3 weeks later. "Officer Bradford, you remain under oath. You will return for the continued hearing. If evidence of misconduct is found, this court will take appropriate action. This hearing is continued." She banged her gavel. Bradford stood up stiffly and left the witness stand. He did not look at James. He walked out of the courtroom quickly, his earlier confidence completely gone. Several people approached James in the hallway. "That was amazing," one man said. "I wish I had fought my ticket like that." James shook hands and answered a few questions, but his mind was already on the next hearing. He had shaken Bradford's credibility. He had shown the judge that something was wrong. But the real fight was just beginning. The next hearing would determine if Bradford faced real consequences, and James was going to make sure he did. The day after the court hearing, James received a phone call from a number he did not recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. "Is this James Park?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is James. Who is calling?" James replied. "My name is Detective David Chen. I am with the Internal Affairs Division of the Police Department. I need to speak with you about Officer Bradford." James sat up straighter in his chair. "Internal Affairs only investigated police misconduct." "I am listening." "I saw the formal complaint you filed last week. I also heard what happened in court yesterday. The judge's clerk sent over the hearing transcript. Mr. Park, I have been looking at Bradford's record for the past 2 days. and I need to talk to you in person. Can we meet?" Detective Chen's voice was serious. They agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown that afternoon. James arrived early and chose a table in the back corner. Detective Chen walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. He was a Chinese-American man in his mid-40s, wearing a plain gray suit. He carried a thick folder under his arm. They shook hands, and Chen ordered coffee before sitting down. He put the folder on the table but did not open it yet. "I appreciate you meeting with me," Chen said. "I want to be direct with you. What you uncovered about Bradford is worse than you probably realize." "How much worse?" James asked. Chen opened the folder. Inside were spreadsheets, reports, and complaint forms. "I started pulling Bradford's complete record after your complaint. The statistics you found through the public records request only told part of the story. Bradford has had 19 formal complaints filed against him in 5 years. 19. That is far above average." "What happened to those complaints?" James asked. "Most were dismissed due to lack of evidence. A few resulted in verbal warnings. One led to a 3-day suspension. But nothing really changed his behavior," Chen explained. "The problem is that most people who filed complaints did not have the kind of proof you have. It was their word against a police officer's word. The system protects officers in those situations." Chen pulled out a map with colored dots marking locations. "These dots show Bradford's traffic stops over the past 5 years. Red dots are stops in predominantly minority neighborhoods. Blue dots are stops in predominantly white neighborhoods. Notice anything?" The pattern was clear. Red dots covered entire sections of the city. Blue dots were scattered and rare. Bradford worked in minority neighborhoods almost exclusively, even though his assigned patrol area included wealthy white neighborhoods too. "He was choosing where to work based on who lived there," James said. "Exactly. And look at this." Chen showed him another chart. Bradford's citation rate for minority drivers is 87%. For white drivers, it is 18%. He stops a minority driver, he almost always gives them a ticket. He stops a white driver, he usually lets them go with a warning. James felt anger building in his chest. How does someone get away with this for 5 years? Because the system is not designed to catch it. Individual complaints get reviewed individually. Nobody was looking at the pattern until you forced us to look, Chen admitted. Honestly, if you had not shown up in court yesterday with all that evidence, Bradford would have kept doing this for another 5 years. So what happens now? James asked. That depends on what else we can prove. Your case is strong. 3 false citations. Clear evidence they were wrong. But I need more if we are going to take serious action against Bradford. I need other victims willing to come forward with their stories. I need evidence of a pattern of intentional misconduct, not just bad judgment, Chen said. James thought about Marcus, Linda, and Mrs. Lee. I have 3 people who had similar experiences with Bradford. They are willing to provide statements. Chen leaned forward. Can you put me in contact with them? I want to interview each one officially. If their stories match the pattern, that strengthens the case significantly. James called Marcus first. He explained who Detective Chen was and why he wanted to talk. Marcus agreed immediately. I am tired of staying quiet. If my story helps, I want to tell it. Linda and Mrs. Lee also agreed to talk to Chen. Over the next week, Chen interviewed all 3. He took detailed statements. He collected whatever evidence they had saved. Marcus had kept his citation and photographs of the stop sign he supposedly ran. The photos showed the sign was partially hidden by a tree branch. Linda had a written timeline of her stop, noting exact times and what Bradford said. Mrs. Lee's grandson provided the full video, recording of Bradford forcing an elderly woman to stand in freezing weather while he searched her car for drugs she never had. Chen also started digging deeper into the body cam footage issue. James had given him Dr. Alan Chen's forensics report, showing the footage was deliberately deleted. Detective Chen subpoenaed the department's digital logs. The records showed exactly what Dr. Chen said. Bradford accessed the footage file 3 times before it was officially logged. Each access happened during Bradford's shift, from his personal login credentials. The deletions were not an accident or a technical error. They were intentional evidence tampering. This is a crime, Detective Chen told James during another meeting. Destroying evidence in a legal proceeding is obstruction of justice. That is a felony charge. While Chen worked the internal investigation, something else was happening outside the department. Word was spreading about James's court case. One of the people in the courtroom that day posted about it on social media. A lawyer just destroyed a racist cop in court with receipts. 3 false tickets, all proven wrong with evidence. The judge continued the hearing to investigate the cop. This is what justice looks like. The post went viral in the local community. Hundreds of people shared it. Then a reporter from the local news station, Channel 7, reached out to James. Her name was Angela Torres, and she covered civil rights issues. "Mr. Park, I heard about your case. I would like to do a story about it. Would you be willing to talk on camera?" she asked. James hesitated. He did not want this to become about him, but he realized that publicity might encourage more victims to come forward.
"Yes, I will talk to you.
But I want to focus on the pattern, not just my case. This is bigger than 3 traffic tickets." The interview aired 2 days later during the evening news. James explained what happened during his stop. He showed the evidence proving the citations were false. He talked about the pattern in Bradford's record. The story included interviews with Marcus and Linda, who shared their experiences too. "This is not about one bad traffic stop," James said on camera. "This is about systematic discrimination. Officer Bradford targeted people based on how they looked, not what they did. That is not police work. That is harassment." The story generated immediate reaction. The news station's phone lines lit up with calls from other people who claimed Bradford gave them false tickets. The police department's public information office was flooded with media requests. The police union issued a statement defending Bradford and saying he was a dedicated officer being unfairly attacked. But then more stories emerged. A college student named Tyler Jackson came forward with dashcam footage of Bradford stopping him for no reason and searching his car while making racist comments. A businesswoman named Patricia Williams showed records of 2 citations she received from Bradford in the same month, both for violations she did not commit. An elderly veteran named Robert Henderson shared how Bradford stopped him, accused him of stealing his own car, and handcuffed him on the side of the road before realizing the registration matched. Channel 7 aired a follow-up story featuring these new victims. Other news outlets picked up the story. Within a week, Bradford's name was trending on local social media. The district attorney's office released a statement saying they were reviewing all of Bradford's cases from the past year. James started receiving calls from people he never met. Some thanked him for standing up. Others asked for legal help with their own cases involving Bradford. A few people called with information about other officers who behaved similarly. James documented everything and passed it along to Detective Chen, but not everyone was supportive. James also received threatening phone calls. They came from blocked numbers, usually late at night. The voices were always male and always aggressive. "You better drop this case, lawyer. You are making powerful enemies," one caller said. "Keep your mouth shut or you will regret it," another threatened. "Cops protect this city. You are just a troublemaker. Watch your back," said a third. James reported every call to the police. He also installed a security system at his home and office. He told Michelle about the threats. She was scared but supportive. "We cannot back down now," she said. "Too many people are counting on you." Meanwhile, Detective Chen's investigation was expanding. He found 5 more officers who worked closely with Bradford and showed similar patterns in their citation records. It was not just one bad cop. It was a small group of officers who reinforced each other's behavior. Chen also discovered something else troubling. Several supervisors had received complaints about Bradford over the years, but failed to take meaningful action. They documented the complaints in files and then did nothing. One supervisor wrote in a report from 2 years ago, "Officer Bradford needs additional training in community relations and proper citation procedures." But Bradford never received that training. The note just sat in his file. "There is institutional failure here," Chen told James. "Bradford is guilty, but so is the system that protected him. This is going to get bigger before it gets better." At the same time, Bradford was taking action to protect himself. He hired a lawyer from the police union. His lawyer, Dennis Kowalski, was known for aggressively defending officers accused of misconduct. Kowalski immediately went on the offensive. He contacted James's office and requested a meeting. James agreed. curious about what Bradford's lawyer wanted to say. They met in a neutral conference room at the courthouse. Kowalski was a stocky man with gray hair and an expensive suit. He got straight to the point. "Mr. Park, my client made some mistakes. He is willing to admit that. But this media circus you created is destroying a 17-year career over 3 traffic tickets. Is that really justice? Your client did not make mistakes. He committed misconduct repeatedly over many years. This is not about 3 tickets. This is about a pattern of discrimination and abuse of power," James replied calmly. "I can make you an offer," Kowalski said. "Officer Bradford will personally request that all 3 of your citations be dismissed. No fines, no points on your license. Clean slate. In exchange, you drop your internal affairs complaint and stop talking to the media. Everyone walks away." James looked at him for a long moment. No. Just like that?" Kowalski seemed surprised. "Your client broke the law. He violated people's rights. He destroyed evidence. And you want me to pretend none of that happened because he will dismiss tickets he should never have written in the first place?" James's voice stayed level but firm. "The answer is no. I am going to court. I am testifying. And your client is going to face consequences." Kowalski's friendly expression disappeared. "You are making a mistake. The union will fight you every step. We have resources you cannot imagine. This will cost you time, money, and reputation. Is it really worth it?" "Yes," James said simply. "It is worth it." The meeting ended there. Kowalski left with a cold expression. James knew he had just made the fight harder, but he also knew he made the right choice. That evening, James sat in his office reviewing everything one more time. The evidence was overwhelming. Bradford was guilty. The pattern was clear. Justice should prevail. But James had been a lawyer long enough to know that justice did not always win just because it should. He needed to be perfect in the courtroom. Every piece of evidence had to be airtight. Every argument had to be precise. He could not give Bradford any room to escape. The continued court hearing was now just 1 week away. James spent every available hour preparing. He organized witness testimony. He rehearsed his questions. He prepared visual presentations of the statistical data. He made backup copies of all digital evidence. He was ready for whatever Kowalski might try. On the night before the hearing, James got one more phone call. This time it was not a threat. It was from a young officer named Rachel Martinez. "Mr. Park, you do not know me. I am an officer in the same precinct as Bradford. I have been on the force for 3 years," she said quietly. "I want you to know that not all of us are like him. Many of us are disgusted by what he did. We support what you are doing." "Why are you telling me this?" James asked. "Because tomorrow is going to be ugly. The union will try to protect Bradford. Some officers will close ranks. But others of us believe in real justice. We became cops to help people, not harass them. I just wanted you to know you are doing the right thing." "Do not give up," she said. James felt a weight lift slightly. "Thank you. That means more than you know." The call ended. James looked out his office window at the dark city. Tomorrow would determine if the system could fix itself. Tomorrow, Bradford would have to answer for everything, and James was ready to make sure that happened. The courtroom was packed 30 minutes before the hearing was scheduled to begin. Every seat was filled. People stood along the back wall. The media had cameras set up in the designated press area. This was no longer just a traffic court hearing. James arrived early with Sarah at his side. She would help present some of the evidence. Marcus, Linda, and Mrs. Lee sat in the front row behind the defense table. Their presence gave James strength. Dr. Chen, the forensics expert, waited in the witness room. Detective David Chen sat in the gallery, watching carefully. Officer Bradford entered with his lawyer, Dennis Kowalski. Bradford wore his full-dress uniform. The ribbons and medals on his chest were meant to remind everyone he was a decorated officer. But his face looked tired. The past 3 weeks had been hard on him. 2 more officers from his precinct sat behind him in a show of support. But James noticed that not many others came. The police union sent an observer, but most officers stayed away. Judge Morrison entered at exactly 9 o'clock. Everyone stood. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge looked at the crowded room and spoke clearly. "Before we begin, I want to establish some rules. This is a court of law, not a public forum. I will tolerate no outbursts, no comments from the gallery, and no disruptions of any kind. Anyone who cannot follow these rules will be removed immediately. Is that understood?" The room stayed silent. Judge Morrison nodded. Good. This is a continued hearing on the city versus James Park. Case numbers 247731, 247732, and 247733. At the previous hearing, Mr. Park presented evidence that challenged the validity of 3 traffic citations issued by Officer Bradford. I continued the hearing to allow Mr. Park to present additional evidence regarding a possible pattern of misconduct. We will proceed with that evidence now. She looked at James. Mr. Park, you may begin. James stood. Thank you, Your Honor. I call Officer Michael Bradford to the witness stand. Bradford was still under oath from the previous hearing. He walked to the witness stand slowly. His jaw was tight. Kowalski had probably spent days preparing him for this cross-examination. James approached with a folder and a remote control for the courtroom's display screen. Officer Bradford, at our last hearing you testified that my taillight was broken. I failed to signal and my registration was expired. Is that still your testimony? Yes, Bradford said firmly. And I presented evidence proving all 3 citations were false. Correct? Bradford shifted slightly. You presented alternative evidence. I testified to what I observed. You testified to what you claimed to observe, James corrected. But physical evidence proves you were wrong on all 3 counts. So either you made 3 honest mistakes or you intentionally issued false citations. Which is it? Kowalski stood up. Objection. That question is argumentative. Judge Morrison considered it. I will allow it. The question goes to the officer's state of mind. Answer the question, Officer Bradford. Bradford cleared his throat. I believe I made honest observations that night. Honest observations that were contradicted by video footage, mechanic reports, and official DMV records? James asked. Sometimes things look different in the moment than they do later, Bradford said. James clicked the remote. The screen behind him lit up with a chart. Let me show you something. This chart represents your traffic stops over the past 5 years. The data was obtained through a Freedom of Information request. Do you recognize this information? Bradford glanced at the chart. I cannot verify that data without reviewing it in detail. This is official data from your own department. It shows you conducted approximately 3,800 traffic stops in 5 years. Does that sound accurate? I stop a lot of vehicles. That could be accurate, Bradford admitted. Of those 3,800 stops, how many do you think were in predominantly white neighborhoods versus predominantly minority neighborhoods? James asked. I patrol where I am assigned, Bradford said defensively. James clicked to the next slide. A map appeared showing Bradford's patrol zones and stop locations. Your assigned patrol area includes both Riverside Heights, which is 78% white, and 3 other neighborhoods with majority minority populations. Yet 84% of your stops occurred in the minority neighborhoods. Why? I go where the crime is, Bradford said. Crime statistics show that Riverside Heights has similar property crime rates to the other neighborhoods in your patrol area. Yet you rarely stop vehicles there. Why? Bradford's face reddened. I make tactical decisions based on what I observe. James clicked to another slide. This chart shows your citation rates by race. When you stop a white driver, you issue a citation 18% of the time. When you stop a black driver, you issue a citation 87% of the time. When you stop a Latino driver, it is 83%. When you stop an Asian driver, it is 79%. Can you explain this disparity? Every stop is different. I make decisions based on the specific circumstances, Bradford said, but his voice lacked confidence. 3,800 stops. Clear racial patterns in where you work, who you stop, and who you cite. That is not random circumstance, Officer Bradford. That is intentional targeting, James said. Kowalski objected. Your Honor, Mr. Park is testifying instead of asking questions. Sustained. Mr. Park, stick to questions, Judge Morrison said, but she was clearly interested in the data. James nodded. Officer Bradford, I want to introduce testimony from other drivers who had experiences similar to mine. Your Honor, I call Marcus Johnson to the stand. Bradford stepped down and Marcus took the stand. He was sworn in and sat nervously. James asked him to describe his stop with Bradford. Marcus explained how Bradford pulled him over for supposedly running a stop sign. I stopped completely. I always stop completely at that intersection because there is a school nearby. But Officer Bradford insisted I ran it. He made me get out of my car in January when it was freezing. He searched my entire car. He asked me repeatedly where I was going and why I was in that neighborhood. It felt like he was looking for a reason to arrest me. Did he give you a citation? James asked. Yes, for running the stop sign. I paid it because I could not afford to miss work for court. I am a teacher. Missing a day means hiring a substitute and disrupting my students, Marcus said. Do you have photographs of that stop sign? James asked. Marcus nodded. James displayed the photos on the screen. They showed a stop sign partially obscured by a large tree branch. Your Honor, these photos were taken 1 week after the stop. They show visibility of the stop sign was compromised by overgrown vegetation. The city trimmed the tree 2 weeks later after multiple complaints. Judge Morrison studied the photos carefully. The sign is barely visible in these images. James called Linda Hernandez next. She described her stop almost identically. False citation. Extended search. Aggressive questioning about why she was in the neighborhood. I was coming home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital where I work as a nurse. I was exhausted. Officer Bradford treated me like a criminal. I paid the fine because I was too tired to fight it. Then Mrs. Lee took the stand. Her hands trembled slightly as she was sworn in. James spoke gently to her. Mrs. Lee, can you tell the court what happened when Officer Bradford stopped you? Mrs. Lee's voice was quiet but clear. He said my car smelled like drugs. I have never used drugs in my life. I am 72 years old. I take blood pressure medicine and vitamins. That is all. But he made me stand outside in the cold while he searched everything. My groceries, my purse, my glove box, everything. I was scared. I thought I was having a heart attack from the stress. How long did the stop last? James asked. More than 40 minutes. My grandson found me because I did not answer my phone. He was worried and came looking for me. He recorded part of it on his phone. James played the video. The courtroom watched in silence as Bradford spoke harshly to an elderly woman who was clearly confused and frightened. His tone was aggressive. His body language was intimidating. When Mrs. Lee's grandson asked politely what the problem was, Bradford snapped at him too. Several people in the gallery shook their heads. Even some of the police officers watching looked uncomfortable. Officer Bradford gave you a citation that day, correct? James asked. Yes, he said my air freshener was blocking my view. It was a small tree hanging from my mirror. I have had it for 3 years. No one ever said it was illegal before, Mrs. Lee said. James thanked her and called Dr. Alan Chen, the forensics expert. Dr. Chen explained in simple terms how the body cam footage was deliberately deleted. The file metadata shows clear evidence of tampering. Someone with police department credentials accessed this file 3 times and deleted specific sections using departmental software. This was not a technical glitch or accidental corruption. It was intentional destruction of evidence, Dr. Chen testified. James introduced the access log showing Bradford's credentials were used each time the file was accessed. Officer Bradford, did you delete portions of your body cam footage from my traffic stop? Bradford was back on the stand. He looked pale. I may have accessed the file. I do not remember deleting anything. The digital evidence shows sections were deleted using your login credentials. If you did not delete them, who did? James asked. I do not know. Someone else might have used my login, Bradford said weakly. Do you share your login credentials with other officers? No, that is against policy. So either you deleted the footage yourself or you violated department policy by sharing your credentials, which allowed someone else to delete evidence on your behalf. Which is it? Bradford had no good answer. He sat silently. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Officer Bradford, this court takes evidence tampering very seriously. The footage from your body cam would have shown exactly what happened during the stop. The fact that it was deliberately deleted during the time you accessed the file is extremely troubling. Kowalski tried to object, but Judge Morrison raised her hand. I have heard enough. Mr. Park, do you have any other evidence to present? Just one more item, Your Honor. James pulled out a thick report. This is the preliminary findings from the Internal Affairs investigation conducted by Detective David Chen. With the court's permission, I would like to enter it into evidence. Judge Morrison accepted the report and read several pages. Her expression grew darker as she read. Finally, she looked up. This report indicates that Officer Bradford has 19 formal complaints filed against him over 5 years. Multiple complaints involved allegations of racial profiling and false citations. Several supervisors noted concerns about his conduct, but failed to take corrective action. This is a systemic failure. She looked at Bradford directly. Officer Bradford, The evidence presented today paints a clear picture of discriminatory policing and abuse of authority. The 3 citations issued to Mr. Park were clearly without merit. The pattern evidence shows this was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader practice of targeting minority drivers. She banged her gavel. All 3 citations against James Park are hereby dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Park, you are free to go with no fines, no points, and no record of these citations. The gallery erupted in applause. Judge Morrison banged her gavel again. Order! I am not finished. The room quieted immediately. She continued. I am also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. The evidence tampering alone warrants potential felony charges. Additionally, I am recommending a comprehensive review of all citations issued by Officer Bradford over the past 5 years. Any person who believes they received a false or discriminatory citation from Officer Bradford should contact the court clerk's office. She looked at Bradford one final time. Officer Bradford, you brought dishonor to your badge and violated the public trust. Whatever consequences follow from this hearing, you have earned them. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell with finality. The courtroom erupted again, this time with no attempt to maintain order. Media rushed to interview James. Marcus, Linda, and Mrs. Lee hugged each other with tears in their eyes. Detective Chen shook James's hand firmly. Bradford sat frozen at the defendant's table. Kowalski gathered papers quickly, trying to get his client out of the courthouse before the media surrounded them. But reporters were already waiting outside. James stood in the center of it all, feeling exhausted but satisfied. Justice had been served. The truth had won, and Officer Bradford would finally face real consequences for his actions. Sarah touched his arm. You did it. You actually did it, James nodded slowly. We did it. But this is just the beginning. Now we make sure this never happens again. The news of Judge Morrison's ruling spread quickly. That evening, every local news station led with the story. Officer suspended after traffic court reveals pattern of discrimination, read one headline. Lawyer dismantles racist cop's false citations, said another. James's phone did not stop ringing for 3 days. The police department issued a statement the morning after the hearing. Officer Michael Bradford was suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the criminal investigation and internal affairs review. Police Chief Margaret Williams held a press conference. She looked uncomfortable as reporters shouted questions. We take these allegations very seriously, Chief Williams said. The behavior described in court does not reflect the values of this department. We will cooperate fully with all investigations and take appropriate action based on the findings. A reporter asked, Chief Williams, Officer Bradford had 19 complaints over 5 years. Why did the department not act sooner? The chief hesitated. Our complaint review process follows established protocols. In retrospect, there may have been opportunities to identify patterns earlier. We are reviewing those processes to ensure this does not happen again. The district attorney's office assigned a senior prosecutor to investigate the evidence tampering. Assistant District Attorney Maria Santos was known for being tough on police misconduct cases. She contacted James within 2 days of the hearing. Mr. Park, I have reviewed the forensic evidence regarding the body cam footage. We have enough to charge Officer Bradford with obstruction of justice. That is a felony. I want to make sure you understand that this will become a criminal case which is separate from your traffic citations, Ada Santos explained. I understand. What do you need from me? James asked. Your testimony and all the evidence you collected. We will also need Dr. Chen's expert testimony. This is going to trial unless Bradford takes a plea deal, she said. James agreed to cooperate fully. Over the next 2 weeks, he met with Ada Santos multiple times. He provided copies of everything. The dashcam footage, the forensics report, the statistical analysis. All of it became part of the criminal investigation. Meanwhile, the internal affairs investigation expanded dramatically. Detective David Chen was assigned a full team to review Bradford's cases. They started with the most recent year and worked backward. What they found was stunning. Of the 617 citations Bradford issued in the past year alone, at least 143 were highly questionable. Many cited broken taillights that were later proven functional. Others claimed failures to signal that traffic cameras showed were false. Some involved expired registrations that were actually current. The pattern was consistent and deliberate. The department set up a special hotline for people to report wrongful citations from Bradford. Within the first week, over 300 calls came in. Not all were legitimate. Some people just wanted to complain about old tickets, but many described experiences identical to James's story. False violations, extended searches, intimidating behavior, racial profiling. Detective Chen interviewed dozens of victims personally. He documented each case carefully. The scope of Bradford's misconduct became clear. Over 5 years, he had falsely cited hundreds of people. Most had paid their fines without fighting because the system was designed to make fighting too difficult. Bradford knew this and exploited it. One victim, a young man named Deshaun Williams, shared his story with reporters. Bradford stopped me 6 times in 2 years. 6 times. Every time for something different. Failure to signal, broken taillight, loud music, rolling through a stop sign. I never fought any of them because I did not think I could win. I am just a warehouse worker. How do I fight a cop? But Mr. Park showed me that you can win if you have the evidence. I wish I had known that earlier. The city manager announced that all of Bradford's citations from the past 5 years would be automatically reviewed. Any citation that could not be fully justified with evidence would be overturned. People who paid fines would receive refunds. People who got points on their licenses would have them removed. It was an unprecedented action that would cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars. The police union remained mostly silent. They issued one statement saying they believed in due process and would not comment on an ongoing investigation. But privately, many officers distanced themselves from Bradford. Officer Rachel Martinez, who had called James before the hearing, spoke to the media anonymously. Most of us are disgusted by what Bradford did. We work hard to build trust in our communities. Officers like Bradford destroy that trust and make our jobs harder. We want accountability too. 3 weeks after the hearing, the district attorney's office announced that Officer Bradford had been charged with obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Both were felony charges. If convicted, he could face up to 5 years in prison. Bradford appeared in court with his lawyer for the arraignment. He pleaded not guilty. Bail was set at $50,000. He posted it and was released with the condition that he surrender his passport. Bradford's lawyer, Dennis Kowalski, tried to negotiate a plea deal. He approached Ada Santos with an offer. Bradford would resign from the police force and accept probation if the felony charges were reduced to misdemeanors. Santos refused. Your client committed serious crimes that violated the public trust. He destroyed evidence to cover up his misconduct. That deserves felony prosecution. If he wants to plead guilty to the felonies, we can discuss an appropriate sentence. But we are not reducing the charges, Santos said firmly. The negotiation took several more weeks. Finally, Bradford agreed to a plea deal. He would plead guilty to 1 count of obstruction of justice, a felony. He would resign from the police force immediately and surrender his law enforcement credentials permanently. He would serve 2 years of probation, perform 300 hours of community service, and pay restitution to victims whose cases were overturned. The evidence tampering charge would be dropped as part of the deal. On the day Bradford appeared in court to enter his plea, James sat in the gallery with Marcus, Linda, and Mrs. Lee. They wanted to see this moment with their own eyes. Bradford stood before the judge looking defeated. His uniform was gone. He wore a plain suit. His lawyer stood beside him. Mr. Bradford, do you understand the charges against you and the terms of this plea agreement? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, Bradford said quietly. And do you admit that you intentionally deleted body cam footage to obstruct justice? Bradford paused. This was the moment of truth. Finally, he said, Yes, Your Honor, I admit it. The judge accepted the plea and imposed the agreed sentence. Bradford was now a convicted felon. He would never work as a police officer again. His career was over. As Bradford left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions at him. He said nothing. Kowalski made a brief statement. My client takes responsibility for his actions. He deeply regrets his mistakes and hopes to move forward with his life. James watched from inside the courthouse. Sarah stood next to him. How does it feel? She asked. Incomplete, James said honestly. Bradford is done, but the system that protected him for 5 years is still there. We changed one thing. We need to change more, he was right. The fight was not over. It was expanding. Victims of Bradford's false citations began filing civil lawsuits against the city. Marcus, Linda, and Mrs. Lee were among the first. They sued for civil rights violations, emotional distress, and false arrest. James represented Mrs. Lee personally and helped coordinate representation for the others. The city faced potential liability in the millions of dollars. 6 months after the hearing, the city settled the first batch of lawsuits. Mrs. Lee received $85,000. Marcus received $62,000. Linda received $55,000. 18 other victims received settlements ranging from $20,000 to $70,000. The city paid out over $1.2 million in total, with more cases still pending. But James wanted more than money for victims. He wanted systemic change. He worked with community leaders and the city council to propose new policies. The proposals included mandatory bias training for all officers, early warning systems to flag officers with concerning citation patterns, independent review of all police misconduct complaints, and automatic body cam footage preservation in all traffic stops. The city council held public hearings on the proposals. James testified along with dozens of Bradford's victims. The testimonies were powerful. One after another, people described how Bradford's actions affected their lives. Lost jobs because of suspended licenses, increased insurance costs, fear of police, damaged trust in the system. Mrs. Lee's testimony was particularly moving. She spoke softly but clearly. "I came to this country 40 years ago. I worked hard. I followed every rule. I raised 3 children here. I believed in America and its promise of equal treatment. Officer Bradford made me feel like I did not belong in my own neighborhood, like I was suspicious just because of how I looked. That should never happen to anyone. Please make sure it never happens again." The council passed the reform package unanimously. Police Chief Williams announced she was implementing the changes immediately. "We failed these victims. We failed our community. These reforms will help ensure we do better." The story attracted national attention. James received invitations to speak at conferences about police accountability and civil rights. He appeared on news programs to discuss his case. Legal organizations asked him to write articles about his experience. He became an advocate for police reform, though he insisted he was just a lawyer who stood up for himself. But the local impact was most important to him. James started offering free legal clinics twice a month at a community center. He taught people their rights during traffic stops. He explained how to document encounters with police. He showed people how to challenge wrongful citations. The clinics were always full. One evening, a young woman named Jasmine Rodriguez approached him after a clinic. "Mr. Park, I got stopped last week. The officer said my taillight was broken, but I remembered your case. I checked my taillight with my phone video before the officer came to my window. It was working fine. I showed him the video. He looked embarrassed and let me go without a ticket. You saved me from being another statistic." James smiled. "You saved yourself by knowing your rights and documenting the truth. That is what this is really about, empowering people to stand up for themselves." The police department's culture began changing slowly. The reforms worked. The early warning system flagged 3 other officers with concerning patterns in the first 6 months. All 3 received additional training and supervision. Citation rates across the department became more balanced demographically. Complaints of racial profiling decreased by 40% in the first year after the reforms. Officer Rachel Martinez was promoted to sergeant. She became part of the training team that taught new officers about bias and proper policing. She contacted James to thank him. "What you did changed the department for the better. We needed someone from outside to force us to look at ourselves honestly. Thank you for not giving up." A year after the hearing, James received an award from the local bar association for his work on civil rights and police accountability. The ceremony was held at a hotel downtown. Michelle and his children attended. So did Marcus, Linda, Mrs. Lee, Detective Chen, and dozens of people whose lives were touched by the case. When James accepted the award, he did not talk much about himself. Instead, he talked about everyone else. This award belongs to Mrs. Lee, who had the courage to share her painful experience. It belongs to Marcus and Linda, and all the other victims who came forward. It belongs to Detective Chen, who investigated his own department honestly. It belongs to Judge Morrison, who took the evidence seriously. It belongs to every person who stands up against injustice even when standing up is hard. He paused and looked at the audience. "A year ago, I was just a man pulled over for false citations. I could have paid $450 and moved on with my life. That would have been easier. But easier is not always right. Officer Bradford counted on people choosing easy over right. He counted on people not fighting back. He was wrong. We fought back, we won, and we changed things so fewer people will need to fight this battle in the future. The audience stood and applauded. James saw tears in Mrs. Lee's eyes. He saw pride in Marcus's face. He saw his daughter looking at him with admiration. In that moment, James understood something important. The real prize was never about dismissed citations or Bradford's conviction. The real prize was the proof that the system could work when good people refused to accept injustice. James kept the dashcam footage and all the court recordings. He used them as training materials in his legal clinics. He showed people exactly how he documented everything, how he built his case, and how he presented evidence effectively. The materials inspired others to stand up for their rights. Bradford's case became a teaching example in police academies across the state. Training officers used it to show recruits what not to do. It demonstrated how bias destroys careers, hurts communities, and undermines legitimate police work. Bradford became a cautionary tale. 3 years after the hearing, James was invited to speak at a community event honoring local heroes. He initially declined, saying he was not a hero, but the organizers insisted. When he arrived, he was surprised to see hundreds of people there. Many were former victims of police misconduct. Others were young people interested in law and justice. Some were police officers who supported reform. The MC introduced James by describing his case and its impact. Because of James Park's courage and determination, our city changed its policies, held a bad officer accountable, and created a model for police reform that other cities are copying. He showed us that one person standing up for what is right can make a difference. James took the microphone. He thanked everyone and then said something unexpected. "I want to invite someone to join me up here. Mrs. Grace Lee, would you come up, please?" Mrs. Lee looked surprised but walked to the stage slowly. James helped her up the steps. Mrs. Lee is the real hero of this story. When Officer Bradford humiliated her, she had every reason to stay quiet. She was scared. She was elderly. She could have just paid her fine and tried to forget, but she came forward. She shared her story. Her courage gave other victims courage. Her voice changed everything. This is her moment, not mine. The crowd gave Mrs. Lee a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. She cried. James hugged her, and in that moment, everyone in the room understood what justice really looked like. The story of James Park and Officer Bradford became more than just a court case. It became a lesson about documentation, persistence, courage, and the power of standing up for truth. It showed that the system could work when people demanded accountability. It proved that one person with evidence and determination could challenge injustice and win. James returned to his regular law practice, but he never forgot what he learned during those intense months. Every time someone asked him for advice about a police encounter, he said the same thing. Document everything. Know your rights. Never accept injustice just because fighting it is hard. The truth is powerful, but only if you preserve it and present it effectively. Years later, law students would study his case in civil rights classes. They would analyze his strategy, his evidence gathering, and his courtroom tactics. But the most important lesson was simpler than legal strategy. It was the lesson that Officer Bradford learned too late. When you abuse power and violate people's rights, eventually you will face someone who refuses to back down, someone who has the evidence, the courage, and the determination to hold you accountable. James Park was that someone, and because he stood up, hundreds of other people found the courage to stand up too. That was the real victory. Not just justice for James, but justice as an example for everyone else. The system changed because one man refused to accept 3 false traffic tickets. He turned a routine traffic stop into a movement for accountability. And in doing so, he proved that justice is not just about laws and courts. It is about people who care enough to fight for what is right, even when the fight is difficult and the outcome is uncertain. Officer Bradford lost his career, his reputation, and his freedom because he thought he could abuse his power without consequences. James Park gained nothing material from his fight except dismissed tickets he never should have received in the first place. But what he gave to his community was priceless. Hope, proof that accountability exists, a model for how to challenge injustice effectively, and the knowledge that standing up for the truth even when standing alone at first can change everything. That lesson echoed long after the courtroom doors closed. And somewhere in the city, On any given night, someone getting pulled over for a questionable traffic stop remembered James Park's story and decided to document everything carefully. Because justice is not just about what happens in court. It is about what people do before they ever get to court. It is about refusing to accept injustice. It is about having the evidence when it matters. And most of all, it is about never giving up when you know you are right. James Park taught everyone that lesson, and the city was better for it.